Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kathy McWiggin, and I work in the Education Outreach Department at the Library of Congress. We are thrilled to welcome you to day 2 of the second annual online conference for educators. Our session today, Kindergarten Historians, will be recorded and posted to the library's teacher page. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mike Appeldorf from the Education Outreach staff. He is your MC for the session, and we hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to jump right in and introduce our presenter, Teresa St. Angelo, the 2016-2017 teacher in residence at the Library of Congress, has been a kindergarten teacher within Manalapan Englishtown School District in New Jersey for 18 years. She also taught both preschoolers and undergraduate students in the Rutgers Nutritional Sciences Preschool. St. Angelo was presented with the Teacher of the Year Governor's Award in her school district, has been recognized by NASA for contributing to children's education, and is a published author of children's literature. Welcome, Teresa, and take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a sunny afternoon here in Washington, D.C., and I was thinking it's the perfect afternoon to talk about primary sources. So welcome, and let's get started. So on my opening slide, there's a picture of my kindergarten students engaged in primary sources. And once upon a time, I was an undergraduate student, and I signed up to tutor students at a local school, and they assigned me a kindergarten boy. He was so enthusiastic and happy and excited, and I treasured the time I spent with him that I decided that this was the age group I just was dying to teach. There was just one problem, though. I didn't know how to play the piano. And I remembered my kindergarten teacher playing the piano, and I was worried that that was a requirement. But when I went to the education department, they assured me, no problem, I could get my teaching degree and go on to teach kindergarten. Well, lo and behold, my very first interview, the principal took me to the kindergarten room, and there was a piano right in the front of the room. And she told me, don't worry about it if you can't play. We have a record player. And I know that today, very few people use record players, but I still do. Maybe I should do a primary source lesson on record players. Anyway, my goals for you today, I hope that you'll learn new strategies to strengthen a young learner's ability to analyze, evaluate, investigate, and develop reason explanations. I hope that at the end of this session, you feel confident and comfortable using primary sources, and also extending that to your colleagues, telling them what a challenging activity it is for everyone. And I hope you see the value in them. Well, I began my commitment to primary sources when I signed on for a week-long summer institute that the Teaching with Primary Sources office was giving at the Library of Congress. And if you could see the grandeur of this main reading room, I would like to say that the experience I had with Teaching with Primary Sources Summer Institute was just as grand. Once there, I met teachers from across the country, and we learned how to navigate the Library of Congress website. That's just filled with millions of primary source resources. So the magnificence of the building was equal to that valuable and powerful learning. The lessons that I learned engaged students, develop critical thinking, and construct knowledge. During that week, we all had to create a lesson to take back to our classroom. And at the end of the week, we were evaluated by expert staff from the Library of Congress, as well as our colleagues present during the week. And that was a valuable piece of information, because what I thought was great in my lesson, somebody else gave me another idea, and that made it even greater. I'm sure you can see my excitement with the primary sources. So when I went back to my school district, I wanted to get everybody on board to use primary sources and to see the value in them. So I first went to my administrators and my superintendent of curriculum. I must have spent 2 hours with her, and then we decided that we were going to do a professional day for teachers. I talked to colleagues about what I was doing and what I learned, and they immediately went on the website and were looking up primary sources. And the other thing is, I said I have to get parents on board too. And to me, getting parents involved in what I do in the classroom is vital to the students' education. So I drafted this piece and I read it to them on back to school night. This is for the parents, and it's history in our class. I also did show them the slide of the main reading room, get them a little excited about the grandeur of the program. And as you can see, I wrote, it's going to be an exciting year of analyzing and discovery, and they'll learn what a historian is and does. Then once a month, they'll have the opportunity to be a historian, analyzing, questioning, and discovering the past. And then I talked about what these special lessons would do. And then this particular year, my first lesson was an artifact from the Mayan culture. And so parents at back to school night were all on board. They were so excited to get started. They were thrilled at the engagement that this would bring their children. So what I would like to do next is let you get involved with a primary source. This is a photo, a primary source photo taken from the Library of Congress digitized collection. And we're going to begin this primary source, or your first analyzing, by asking you to write something that you see or something that you notice. What details did you see that made you think that? There's another question you could pose at this time, which I will. What other knowledge did you use to make that observation? I see somebody said a train. What made you say that? Okay, and one more question. Did you see a detail that made you say that, or was it something you already knew? Well, I see excellent observations. You're noticing quite a bit. You've noticed a lot of the things that my students noticed. But I'm also going to ask you now to make some reflection. And when you make a reflection, you start with, I think that. For example, I think that's a light because I saw one like that in my mother's kitchen. Oh, I see man is in charge. Mail room, cramped and crowded. All right, I see excellent engagement, excellent observations, excellent reflections. And now, what are some of your questions? What do you want to know more about? Why is the room so small? That's what if would happen if there was a fire? Very good questions. I know I see a lot of people focusing on the gun. We're going to address that later. And slips of paper. Very good. Okay, so that was a very simple, fast analysis. And we're going to continue because I want to show you how my kindergarten students analyze photographs. So this lesson I gave to them in February. So in February, I had a lot of preliminary work that I did prior to this. They learned about what a historian is, what a historian does. They learned about what a primary source is. And they also learned that I start these lessons with an essential question for the boys and girls. I can't tell you the excitement in the room when I read the schedule for the day. And whenever I said history lesson for the day in the schedule, the excitement in the room was just contagious. And the boys and girls would ask each other, what do you think the essential question is? And as a teacher, that was so rewarding. Anyway, are you ready for our lesson? Okay. Yes, it was the same photo you analyzed, but the essential question I led this lesson off with was, what are these men doing? Here the boys and girls are involved in making their observations. I put the primary source photo in the plastic sleeve. Each student has a dry erase marker and a dry erase eraser. I also pass out magnifying glasses so they can really search for details. And I give them the essential question, and then I tell them to circle things they want to talk about or circle things that are going to help them discover the answer to that question. What are these men doing? So as you can see, they get right into it. They love to circle details. And I give them about 5 minutes, probably no longer than 5 minutes. And then they get their history study buddy. History study buddies can be assigned, or sometimes I just pick their names, 2 names out that are on craft sticks, and then they go off with their study buddy. And then they talk to each other about the details that they found and what they noticed first and why. And I teach them how to ask those questions. Describe that to me. How did you know that was a light? How did you know that was a bag of mail? So again, I give them about 5 minutes to work with their study buddy, and then we gather back together as a whole group. And on a large chart paper, I have the primary source analysis tool, similar to the primary source analysis tool. I divide a large chart paper into 3 sections: observe, reflect, question. Under observe, I write I see blank, reflect, I think blank, and question, I wonder blank. So these are some of the observations made by my students. Some of the things they saw: men, shelves, lights, a lot of bags, a man wearing boots, hats on men, different hats, the letters US. It was interesting that a lot of you noticed the gun when you made your initial observations. I have to say, very few boys and girls ever even brought that up, believe it or not. And that's probably based on their prior knowledge, because that gun is in a holster, and I don't know if many of the students even know what a holster is. Anyway, then they make their reflections, and then I said, I think what? So they responded by, I know they are men. I think that's a shelf because we have shelves like that in the classroom. And I think that's a light because I have seen lights like that before. Then some boys and girls were talking about the boots, and then they would say, I never saw boots like that on anyone, but it's taller than a shoe. I don't know if any of you noticed the boot on the gentleman, and he had like little buttons, I believe. And then, of course, we get the connection they make to their own prior knowledge. My daddy wears a hat like that. That's why I know it was a hat. Okay. And some of their questions, I wonder if they are in a kitchen. And then then the kids just ran off on that. And then somebody said, I wonder, or is it an office? And then somebody said, or a schoolroom. And then, of course, some boys and girls noticed the pipes. And you'd be amazed that the lists go on. And even though this is one list from one particular period of time, every year the list is different. And the boys and girls surprise me with the smallest little details that they see. Okay, now what I wanted to do was to, after we did the observe, reflect question, I told the boys and girls that we're going to go deeper to figure out what those men are doing exactly. And then we're going to watch a video, a primary source video. And I liken this to like peeling an orange. And I tell the boys and girls, we have one piece, we peel the orange off. We have another piece, we peel the orange off. And maybe we'll even have another piece that we peel the orange off until we get to that juicy, delicious slice of orange. And we put that in our mouths, and it's just so delicious. It's a burst of flavor, and you're just going to have a burst of knowledge when you discover what those men were doing. So that's my comparison. When I was researching for a perfect video to go with this lesson, I thought to myself, the boys and girls are really going to enjoy this. And the reaction I have every year is, this is hysterical. This is great. Okay, so then I let them watch the video one time and we just watch it quietly, or, they can say whatever they want during that, but I don't pose a question or ask them any questions during that first viewing. Then I show it again and stop it in certain places so that they can make observations again from this video. And again, they're looking to discover that answer. What were those men doing in that first photo? I know some of you may have already figured out what those men were doing. And where were they? Sorting mail in the post office. Sorting mail to be put in bags. Mailroom sorting mail on a train. The men were on mail trains, sorting mail for various stops. Okay, most of you got it. They were men. They were on a railroad car and they were sorting mail. And like I said, I don't ever even remember getting into a discussion about the gun. And I was thinking, you would just say for protection, or when those observations were. Okay, after we analyzed the video, then I gave the students this map. And I tell them there's another primary source. Again, we're peeling more of that orange and understanding more. And this is a map of railroad routes across the country. Now, I don't know if it's big enough for you to see, but the lines are the railroad routes. And what I did was I had the boys and girls take their pointer finger and they could follow one of the lines. Now, I'm from New Jersey, so I tell the boys and girls they could start at New Jersey, try to find a railroad line, see where it goes, and they use their pointer finger as they go across. And then after they use their pointer fingers, then I tell them use your markers, and they could do different lines with different color markers. And this is a powerful primary source because what I like to help them discover here is how important the railroad was for mail delivery and how important those men were and how important their job was to the whole country. Let me tell you, they love this activity. Okay, after we do that, I put this slide up of a primary source on my smart board. Now this one I don't give out individually to the boys and girls. This I just have up on the smart board, and I use this for an assessment piece. And what I do is I ask the boys and girls to think about what they just learned from the video, the railroad map, and the first primary source. And then I ask them to tell me what they see in this picture. What do they observe? What do they think about it? And so from their responses, I get a quick assessment of who's on target, what are they thinking, what skills might they be using, what skills might I have to reinforce. But this picture just really helped me find out exactly what everybody was thinking. I love that it has US mail on it and that the boys and girls, connect that to the US, the letters US on those mail bags. I also like when they even come up with, we know it's old because there's a horse, and I know that they have a sense of time and a sense of the past. Now, after that, I do give each one this picture individually. Again, it's another primary source, and I do tell them it's a follow-up activity. They know that after our primary source study, we always have a follow-up activity. And again, I want them to notice and details in the picture. So if you want to just write some things you notice in that picture, little girl getting a letter, mail delivery, very good. Yes, I do print them on regular printer paper. I don't even laminate them. because I'm going to tell you something else I do with these photos. I see some very good observations here. Okay, so for this particular picture, my objective is just to see that the girl is receiving mail. And then I go on and tell them how much I love to receive mail. I love to get letters from my family and my friends. And then I tell them what we're going to do today is we're going to write a postcard and mail it to our families. I have the postcards already set up with their addresses on the postcard. And then I read the address. And then the students raise their hand as they hear their address. And then they take their postcard off. And then they write whatever message they want to on the postcard for their family. And again, this is an activity they love. If it's for their family, you see rainbows and flowers and if daddy likes football, you'll see football. They just love to write to mail home. I give them, as much time as they need with that. And then we put a stamp on the postcard and we all walk down to the office mailbox, the outgoing mail, and we mail it home. When those boys and girls, when their families receive that postcard home, the excitement in the classroom is unbelievable. Did you get your postcard? My mom got my postcard. And then we have a whole big discussion again. And the involvement is just thrilling. I see that you're posting that book about Oni, and that's another follow-up activity I did. It's a really good book. You do have to preview it with kindergarten students. There's some things I would suggest, some pages I might skip for kindergarten students, but make sure you preview it before you use it with your students and know what they'll understand and what they can take away from the book. Okay, so after we do that, the one thing I told you at the beginning, I like to involve parents with primary sources. So I made this take home piece. And every time we do a primary source lesson, I send this piece home and I attach all the primary sources that we used. So that's another reason why I don't laminate the pictures. It goes home attached to this. And I ask the parents, to talk about it with their students. But I also ask them to go through it like we just did too. But then I tell the boys and girls that their parents have to do some homework too, and they love hearing that. So this piece goes home attached, and they have to write their name and the parent name. And then what did you think was happening in the print? If I use a map, I'll replace that with map. And then I want the parents to tell me what they learned from their child. And then I want them to circle if they liked this activity or they didn't like. And obviously, if they liked it, it would be a happy face. And if they didn't like it, that would be a sad face. This is a powerful piece. Parents love this piece. Students love to share this. When they bring this in the next day and share it with me, it's so thrilling. And they get so excited. My dad loved that. He was talking about this and that. My mom loved that. We were talking about this and that. And it's just a thrilling piece. I didn't save a sheet that was filled out about the train, but I did find one about another primary source that we used. And this was one of my, this was a lesson that I absolutely loved. Actually, I don't know many that I don't love with when I use primary sources. But this one was a primary source of a boy sitting on a box, and it was raining, and he was waiting for the opening day for baseball. It wasn't waiting for the opening day of a real baseball game. It was a pretend baseball field, or it wasn't like a major league. It was a different league. But we had fun comparing that with the opening day of baseball when I gave the students this lesson. This one I wanted to share with you because where it says, what did you think was happening in the print? The little boy was waiting in line to purchase baseball tickets. What did you learn from your child? I found out, Salvatore, that you need money for everything. That's right. We were talking about how you need to get money to buy the ticket. And then down at the bottom, this is what is really very telling to me. They both enjoyed the lesson, and her son said that he enjoyed looking at the picture and making an observation, but mom enjoyed it because she got to pick his brain and have an activity with him. And really, it's not a long activity, it's quick and it's enjoyable. And I can't tell you the feedback I get from parents about how much they love it. As a matter of fact, I gave a lesson on football one time, and one father called me up to talk to me all about football for about 15, 20 minutes. It was, that's, they love to share that knowledge, and it's just fabulous. So, why primary sources for young learners? I hope that you feel the same way I do about the value and everything they bring to the students. But I wanted to read to you something that I just found was on the internet in earthskids.com. It's empowering children to create positive change. And it said that children must be given time to dream, to touch, to feel, and most of all, to construct, to build their ideas, to expand on their questions, and to develop a sense of rootedness, of connectedness to the world around them. And that to me is using primary sources in the classroom. By using primary sources, my young learners grow in content knowledge, problem solving, respect. I teach them they have to respect other people's responses no matter what they say. We respect and accept the responses given. My young learners grow in cooperative working skills, speaking skills, foundational reading skills, which just skyrocket. They grow in their sense of accomplishment. I cannot tell you the contentment in the classroom after you give one of these lessons, because their involvement, their engagement, their thinking, the respect they get, and how everyone's answer is respected and acknowledged. It's just so important to build their sense of self. Their enthusiasm for learning has grown by leaps and bounds since I've introduced primary source lessons in kindergarten. I can't tell you how many students will bring in something, a little item, and they'll say, Miss St. Angelo, look at this, look at this. I knew you love this because it's old. And then what I do is I say, well, let's go find out when that was made, or can we find out when the toy company that made that, or let's dig a little deeper, find a little bit more about that. Last year, one of my favorite things was when somebody brought in, it was Steamboat Willie, a picture of Steamboat Willie, and then we got into a big discussion about that. I tell my colleagues that my students can source, contextualize, and corroborate. And I tell my students, and I did borrow this from a popular book, I tell my students, I love primary sources to the moon, but I love how you analyze and work with primary sources to the moon and back. And they love to hear me say that after every lesson. So I hope that you enjoyed my presentation of one of my lessons in my kindergarten class. I hope that you're ready to run and use primary sources. Please read on our teacher's blog. I'm going to be posting some blogs that you can use with young learners. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate sharing this with you. Thank you.